You have resilience within you. You just need to know how to activate it. And as a clinical psychologist, I know how to help you with that because that's what I do on a daily basis. I help people activate internal strength that they didn't know they had. That's why in the psychotherapy format, I see people on a one-to-one basis. Even though I can't directly change their finances or their health, I can't directly pull them out of their own trouble, I can indirectly help influence their life in a positive direction by creating change through them, through their mind or through their behavior. And so by the end of this video, you're going to have 3 science-based ways in which you can access that hidden resilience that you have that you might not have even known that you have. I want to get you to that state that Maya Angelou spoke about when she said that I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Those are Maya Angelou's words. I think she puts it beautifully. And I think she's talking about resilience. And I think that you have that resilience within you. I've seen people unlock it in my own life and in my professional life as a clinical psychologist. And today we're going to talk about how you can do that for yourself. So let's start by talking about what resilience is. According to the American Psychological Association, resilience is your ability to adapt well to challenging or difficult life situations. That is what resilience is. And that's according to the American Psychological Association, pretty much the biggest psychological association on the planet Earth. And so when they speak about difficult or challenging life situation, that's a full spectrum, right? So it could be something on the milder end, something like a breakup or a job rejection, but it could be on the extreme end as well, such as losing a loved one or going through some sort of traumatic experience. And this is really why I think resilience is probably one of the most important psychological skills to live a good life. Because tough times are going to happen to you. Difficult things are going to happen in your life. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that is going to happen. You're going to go through some sort of challenges, some sort of difficulties. As the famous quote goes, adversity does not discriminate. There's not a single person listening to this video that hasn't already been through some difficult situation or won't go through some difficult situation in the future. And as the APA defines resilience, it's your ability to bounce back from those situations that are going to happen to you anyways. This is why we can't just wait for life to get easy to start living our life. We can't just wait for life to get easy to start meeting our goals. We have to learn how to cope with the challenges. As the famous phrase goes, don't wait for it to stop raining, learn how to accomplish things in the rain. Sure, it's raining, but what can you accomplish in the rain? There'll be a challenge at every life stage that you go through. Every stage of your life is going to present new and uncanny challenges. And your ability to adapt well to those challenges is going to be the key deciding factor in terms of your success or your failure in many domains in life. This is why I think resilience is so important. So let's start this video by reframing challenging times as the opportunity to display resilience. Because if you think about it, challenging times are the only times where you can be resilient. You can't be resilient during easy times. By definition, remember, resilience is your ability to adapt well to difficult or challenging life circumstances. So that second part, difficult or challenging life circumstances, that's the condition for resilience. It's sort of like fear and bravery, because you can only be brave when you're experiencing fear. The person who isn't afraid of snakes isn't being brave when they let a snake wrangler put a snake on them. It's the person who's freaking out, the person who's like, oh, I don't want to do this, but let me do it anyways. It's that person who's actually brave. They're displaying bravery because they feel afraid. It's the same with resilience. You can only be resilient during stressful, difficult, challenging times. So let's start this video by reframing the idea that a difficult or challenging life circumstance is the only condition you're going to get to cultivate, promote, nurture your resilience. And I'd like to clear up just one more thing before we get into the 3 techniques that you can use to access your resilience. There are going to be many people who are listening to this video and going to be asking, aren't some people just more resilient than others? Aren't some people naturally more resilient? Isn't it the case that it's almost like having blue eyes or brown eyes? You're just sort of born with it or not. And to that, I'm going to say resilience is absolutely a skill. It's something that you can develop. And don't just take my word for it. Again, the American Psychological Association, the biggest psychological association in the world, on their website on resilience. You can go to it right now. Go to their website and look up resilience, and you'll see that they define it as a skill. They define it as something that can be cultivated, something that can be grown, something that you can access. This means that you have it inside of you. You just need to grow it and nurture it. Everyone has a seed of resilience. You just need to learn how to water it, how to provide sunlight to that seed, how to create the right conditions in the soil to grow that seed, and that seed will grow. But you have that seed within you. You're a human being, so you're built to be resilient. Another expert in the field, Dr. Lucy Hone, who is a senior fellow at the University of Canterbury, and as I said, a world's leading expert in resilience, also agrees that resilience is not a trait. It's not something you're born with or not. It's not like height. It's not like eye color. It's not like skin color. It's something that can be developed. It's a skill. Even Professor Ann Maston, probably the world's most prominent researcher in resilience, who's probably gone through the most amount of resilience research than any brain on this planet, even she agrees that after looking at the scientific literature, resilience is definitely something that seems to be able to be cultivated over time. So if the experts believe that you have resilience within you, that you can activate, that you can cultivate, that you can grow, that it's a skill, if the researchers say this, if the leading experts and scientists say this, who are you to disagree, right? So let's get to the juicy part here. 3 evidence-based strategies that are going to allow you to access your inner resilience that you didn't know you had. And stick around until the end, because I have a free bonus for you, and I'm going to tell you how to access that at the end of the video. So the first technique to access your hidden resilience is to use something called cognitive reappraisal. So cognitive is just a fancy German word for thinking, and reappraisal is to see something differently. So cognitive reappraisal is to think about something differently. Cognitive reappraisal. To think cognitive about something differently. Reappraise something. Okay, cognitive reappraisal. Now, cognitive reappraisal is based on the cognitive model. It's this model in psychology that basically explains that the way in which you think about something can be more important than the actual event that occurs. So what happens can sometimes be less important than how you think about what has happened. And according to this model, how you think about what's happened can have a tremendous impact on your emotions and how you deal with that event. And it's not just psychological science that says this. I mean, Epictetus, one of the most famous Stoic Greek ancient philosophers, he recognized this all that while ago. He said, life isn't about what happens to us, it's about how we perceive what happens to us. But if you go even further back to 500 BCE, the Buddha was also saying this. He was saying, what we think, we become. So there's been a recognition through the human race that the way we think about stuff matters in terms of the emotional impact and how we deal with it, and therefore our resilience. But all of the speculation about the importance of thinking was only really confirmed in the scientific journal Cerebral Cortex in 2013, when Nicola S. Scherer and her colleagues, they published a research article where they basically looked at all the other research articles that were done on the impact of cognitive reappraisal on your emotions and your resilience. And they found conclusively that the way you think about something has a tremendous impact on your emotions and your resilience. So let's go through how exactly you use cognitive reappraisal in your own life. Let's get very practical and very tactical. So the first thing you have to understand is that it's pretty much a 3-step process. First, you want to notice when a particular event is having a negative emotional reaction on you that's lowering your resilience toward that situation. So you have to notice event A occurs and then emotion A occurs. Once you notice that link, you need to look at what's happening between the event and the emotion. And that is where the cognitive aspect comes in, because that's going to be how you're thinking about the situation. So once you've noticed the event and the emotion, you need to notice the thought that's between those two. And once you know what the thought is, then you need to change that thought. You need to think about what kind of thought would have a better emotional impact and lead to actually more resilience. So let's go through some examples to make this a bit clearer. If you, for example, notice that the event is a job rejection and the emotional impact is that you feel very rejected, then between that, you might notice that your thinking is, I'm useless because of this, or I'm not good at anything. So job rejection happens, you have this feeling, oh, there it happens again, I'm not good at anything. And then the emotional impact is feeling very rejected, feeling inferior, feeling unworthy. Now, that thought about this job rejection means that I'm not good at anything, that can be replaced, because that's probably not the most realistic explanation for what happened, but it's most certainly not the most helpful explanation of what happened. So in that space, you could replace it with a thought such as, this job wasn't the right fit for me, which is probably more accurate. When we don't do well at a specific job, oftentimes it's because that's not the right fit. It doesn't have to be this tremendously critical event that happens where you feel super ashamed and unworthy. It could just be the case that that job was not the right fit for you. So this is an example of how we're cognitively reappraising the situation. Another example where resilience may need to play a role is if you face some sort of personal loss in your life. So let's say the event is personal loss, and then the feeling is hopelessness about your life. You might find that a thought in between those two is that you're never going to be happy again. And that's a thought, that you're thinking, oh, I'm never going to be happy after this loss in my life. But a more helpful thought that you could insert there, so in other words, how you could cognitively reappraise the situation, is to say something like, I can find joy in a different way in my life. Or I'm deeply saddened now, but this doesn't mean I'll be unhappy forever, because that's probably more realistic. So I hope these examples make it clear to you that it's a very quick way to immediately access that resilience that you might have inside of you, because it's very quick to change a thought. You can do it very quickly. It might be difficult in the beginning, especially with thoughts that are a bit more sticky, because some thoughts are a bit more sticky than others. But this is a way with some practice that you will be able to immediately access that resilience within you if you're able to reframe these situations in terms of your thinking, because that will lower the negative emotional impact and it will allow you to display some resilience in that moment. So let's move on to the second technique to be able to immediately access resilience within yourself. And this one might surprise you, but it's actually gratitude. Gratitude is the state of general thankfulness and appreciation for what you have. But you'll be surprised to hear that gratitude can actually act as a way to immediately access resilience when you need it. There's this famous quote that illustrates this quite well. It's attributed to various sources, but basically it says, the goal of resilience is to move from surviving to thriving. And a key and vital process in moving your life from surviving to thriving is gratitude. So that quote illustrates that gratitude is a state that allows you to move from not just keeping your head above the water, but learning how to swim effectively. And it does this because it's very difficult to feel like you're in hardship and adversity when you're also being grateful at the same time. Gratitude activates different neural circuits than the ones that occur when we're in this chronic stressed condition. Most people think that if you're very grateful and if you're content and you have this thankfulness and gratitude for what you have, many people think that that'll take out the energy from you and the motivation to make your life better and to thrive and to be resilient. But actually, research shows the opposite. And a key paper that showed this is a paper called Gratitude and Well-Being that was published in 2010 in the journal called Psychiatry. And that research study showed conclusively that the more gratitude you have, the more well-being you have. And they also showed that that well-being led to more resilience because you're just in a better state. You're in a state to flourish and to thrive. So you're more likely, when you have high levels of well-being, to move from surviving, merely surviving, to thriving. And although most of us already know about the benefits of gratitude, I mean, you've probably experienced it in your own life, that good feeling that comes from being grateful. Even though you might know this, or most people know this, we struggle to do so. We struggle to be grateful. And that's because of our evolutionary history. If you think about it, when we were hunter-gatherers, let's say we were in a cave and we came out of our cave and we saw a tiger and a beautiful rainbow. It made more sense for us to focus on the tiger, on the negative aspect of the environment, than the rainbow. Those who focused on the rainbow got eaten by the tiger, and so they didn't pass on their genes. They didn't have children that were more likely to look at the rainbow. The ones who survived are the ones who noticed the tiger immediately. They were able to focus on the negative aspect of the environment. And because they focused on the negative aspect, they were more likely to survive. And they're the ones who had babies and passed on their genes, and they gave rise to children who are also more likely to pay attention to negative experiences in the environment. So that is why we're less likely to be grateful. We have a negativity bias. That's part of our evolutionary history. It's part of how we survived. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a bad thing if we live in our current day and age where we need to be resilient and where gratitude is really taking a backseat and we can't intentionally activate that process. And for those who feel like their life is really difficult and really hard, I mean, even if you're listening to this right now and you think your life is really hard, you don't have much to be grateful for, I would challenge you there. Because although we oftentimes feel like we don't have much to be grateful for, our lives are actually a lot better than we oftentimes think. I mean, just run this thought experiment for a moment. Think about even the person who's in chronic pain in their Achilles heel or their lower back. That person doesn't have pain in most of their body. Most of their muscles are functioning fine. Even the person with a specific medical condition, there are tons of organ systems that are running well, even for the person who has a specific illness. And then if you think about someone who loses a loved one, even in those situations, as difficult as it is, most of the people that they love didn't die on that day. There's still so much love that they can receive and give that's there. And now, I'm not saying this as a way to judge you if you struggle to focus on the positives in those really difficult situations, but what I am saying is that there is always a lot to be grateful for, even in the midst of the most difficult life circumstances. So a really good protocol to practice accessing your gratitude and therefore accessing your resilience is to write down 3 things on a daily basis that you're grateful for. This was actually invented by Professor Martin Seligman. He ran studies where he measured what happened to people if they wrote down 3 things that they're grateful for on a daily basis. And he found that it was so powerful that it didn't just increase their well-being in their lives, it actually reduced depression in a lot of the people who were depressed. It reduced their depressive symptoms over time. And I think the time period was about 8 weeks, so it's not even that long to do it. So this is something that's extremely powerful and you should try it. Write down 3 things on a daily basis that you're grateful for. This could be small things or it could be huge things. It doesn't matter as long as you're writing new things and perhaps revisiting some things on days where you can't think of anything new, and you keep tracking that over time. You'll notice that within a few weeks, your well-being increases, and with that, you'll be more resilient. You'll be more likely to be able to face challenges. Because the person who is just focusing on the negative already feels overwhelmed and overburdened, so they're less likely to be resilient. They're less likely to be able to push through difficult times because they're focusing on all the negatives. So they don't have much energy left. They don't have much zest in their step. So prioritize working on your gratitude because, as Neil Walsh once said, where gratitude begins, suffering ends. Now, the third psychological evidence-based strategy to be able to immediately access your resilience is to get in touch with your purpose. Your purpose is basically a stable intention to accomplish something that goes beyond yourself and that's personally meaningful. And when I think about purpose and resilience, the case of Reshma Saujani comes to mind. Just think about her. She created Girls Who Code, which is this nonprofit that teaches girls how to engage in programming languages so they're more likely to be employed in the tech fields. And this is amazing because she found, according to the research, that 40% of women make up these roles within the tech industry, but most of them are incompetent when it comes to programming because they haven't been taught this, they haven't been given the opportunities. And she found that 40% of all family households are actually supported by a female. So 40% of all family households are currently being upheld and the breadwinner is a female. And so she focused on teaching females how to code. And currently she's helping 90,000 females to be able to learn how to code. And Reshma has had her own challenges, her own difficulties in her own life. She's a lawyer turned activist because of many of the struggles that she's had. But what gave her resilience in creating this wonderful mission that she's engaging in is the fact that she has a purpose. She has this well-meaning, this stable intention to be able to contribute meaningfully to something beyond herself. And that gives her strength and that allows her to access reserves that she didn't know she had. As Nietzsche once said, the person who has a why can bear almost any how. So you need to learn about what your why is. Why do you live? Why do you do what you do? Having a why, having a purpose can get you through difficult times and getting through difficult times is exactly what resilience is. A wise man once said that true resilience is built on a foundation of purpose and the persistence to pursue that at all odds. And if you think about it, most of us resonate with this idea. You have this within you. Again, this is why I think it's something that can help you access your resilience, because I think purpose is also something that you have inside of you. It's why we resonate when we watch films. I mean, most films, most series are about a character who's on a mission, who has some purpose, who has this arc, this narrative arc where they have some sort of vision for the future or for their lives, and they're trying to accomplish that. And most of us resonate with that. We resonate with that purpose, with that person who is purpose driven. And this is why I think that this is something that can help you access your resilience within. So a practical and tactical way to be able to identify your purpose is to think about what you would be doing if money were no issue. If you had all the money in the world, what would you be doing with your time that would feel very meaningful to you? That would make you feel like you're servicing something that's beyond just the ego, just this lonely self. An alternative way to do this is to think about what's brought you joy in the past. When have you felt like you were living according to your values? So accessing an old memory, just thinking back in your life, when did you feel like your life was meaningful? When did you feel like your life had purpose? And then if you identify some of those memories, you'll be able to access something that's important in there, within the memory. So the memory will reveal something about the purpose that you have within yourself. So this is a very useful way to identify what your purpose is. Now that concludes the third technique, but let's get down to something that's really important when it comes to resilience, which is the fact that people who are resilient are physiologically not as stressed as people who struggle with resilience. Because what we found is that physiologically, the people who struggle to be resilient, the people who struggle to adapt to stress, are the people who already feel overwhelmed physiologically. They're already pumped with too much stress hormones. Their HPA axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenocortical axis in the brain. I know that's a mouthful, you don't need to know the word, but the people who have hyperactivation of that axis in the brain, that part of their nervous system, they notice that those people aren't as resilient as people who are a bit more regulated physiologically, meaning that they have less stress hormones in their body, they have less noradrenergic activity, they have less activation of the HPA axis, all of these parts in your body that are responsible for stress. So in order to adapt well to stress, you need to make sure that your nervous system isn't overwhelmed by stress. And this is where the bonus comes in, the bonus for this video, because I've put a link in the description of this video. You'll find it at the top of the video description. And this link will basically take you to a free video training where I'll teach you 3 evidence-based techniques that can help you down-regulate your physiology if you're already in a highly stressed state. So I'll see you there next.